You may go, you may come back. We'd love to have you here. And that's really the point of these kinds of partnership programs for us, is to get folks who obviously have an interest in nature and conservation and wildlife in the oceans, in dolphins, here. Maybe you've never been to Marineland before, and you're here because of the lecture, but maybe you'll stay because of the wonderful animals that we would really love to teach you about. So these partnership programs are really about broadening our audience and really creating an army of folks who all have some mutual goals, and together we can make a difference in the world. So thank you all for being here. And along those lines, if any of you are interested in getting up early and walking the beach, I've got a couple of interesting opportunities for you coming up. Tomorrow and Thursday at 7 a.m., we will be doing a sunrise dolphin beach walk at Butler Beach, right up the road here, just north of State Road 206. That program is through the St. Johns County Parks and Recreation, and you do need to sign up and make a reservation, and you can do that on their website. If you go to their website, if you go to their Facebook page, if you go to our Facebook page, information is there. But if you would like to join me for a very early walk on the beach, hopefully we'll see some great stuff. Or if you don't want to get up quite that early, but you do still love walking the beach, this Saturday is Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. And Marineland is hosting a beach cleanup at our beach. There's just south of Marineland, there is a big parking lot and a boardwalk and beautiful public beach right there. At 9 o'clock, we will be doing a beach cleanup, and everyone who participates will be given free admission to Marineland. So if you'd like to participate in that and show a little love to our planet on this Earth Day, we would love to have you here. Okay, so that's all it for housekeeping and Marineland programs. I'm going to introduce our speaker, Dr. Bossart, and this is the bio. And I'm not going to, I'm going to go rogue, other than to tell you that our speaker today is our veterinarian, and so he is coming to you literally from having just been in the water doing checkups on our dolphins. So we love him because he keeps our 16 beautiful smiling faces out there happy and healthy. He is an incredible educator for all of our team, our staff, our dolphin trainers. He is incredibly well educated, 18 years with an undergraduate degree and a master's degree and a veterinary degree and a PhD. He is widely regarded for his knowledge about marine mammal health, both at Marineland and the Georgia Aquarium as a veterinarian, but also wild marine mammal health. He is the guy who does the analysis of health assessments and necropsies on all different species of marine mammals. And so you are going to be learning really from an amazing expert today. So settle in and get comfortable for what is sure to be a really phenomenal talk. I'm going to say, and this is the part where I'm going rogue a little bit, from an environmental educator's perspective, one of the really wonderful things about this presentation specifically is that it helps to connect dolphin and marine mammal health issues with human health issues. One of the reasons that we have dolphins here and we talk about dolphins is because it's really easy for people to connect with dolphins. Bottlenose dolphins are not an endangered species. So you could argue, well, why aren't you speaking about all the amphibians that we're losing every day? Or why aren't you speaking about birds that are going extinct? The truth is it's a lot harder to get people to care about a frog or a mussel or a shark or a newt. However, because it's pretty easy to get them to care about dolphins, a lot of the things that people are willing to do to protect an animal who is as charismatic as a dolphin will inadvertently protect all the other guys too, right? So that's a lot of what we do here. For those few people who can't find a way to connect even with dolphins, well, they can certainly find a way to connect with themselves and their families and the people that they love and their own health. And maybe protecting those things will also protect a lot of the other species in our planet. So on this Earth Day, that's how I'm looking at this presentation, is how can we use this information to really increase the group of folks who are willing to step up and make a change on the planet. So enjoy. Dr. Bossart, welcome. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here, and if my pants are wet, it's because I was in the water. I didn't bring my other pants. So. I'm going to talk today, I know we started on dolphins, but I'm adding a little bit on this talk about marine mammals in general. And this concept of using marine mammals as sentinels or indicator species, or how many of you heard of the canary in the coal mine? Same idea. Dolphins are very good sentinels, and a lot of other marine mammals are for this concept. I'm going to stress, though, my training, my advanced training in veterinary medicine was in comparative pathology. So I'm a pathologist, and I actually studied human pathology at the University of Miami. Used to do autopsies on people and in my residency program. So I'm very interested in this connection with the health of the oceans and health, how that impacts our health. So I'm going to be talking about this One Health concept, and I want you to take this One Health concept home with you. One Health is this concept. It's actually a re-emerging discipline that addresses the interaction between animal, human, and environmental health. This is amazingly important now because you're hearing more information about Ebola that's coming out of Africa. The people who are getting Middle East respiratory syndrome is a new one that's likely has the camel in it somewhere. HIV, all these things are emerging, which you hear on TV, that impact human beings. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I want you to come back with this One Health. Remember the One Health concept, because in this area where we have plans to build a One Health Institute right here. So, and again, this is about people, essentially not about animals. So, with that said, why are marine mammals good sentinels or good canaries in the coal mine? Well, they're high in the food chain. They live in coastal areas, so what impacts coastal ecosystems impacts them. These dolphins live very close in the Atlantic. They are fairly long-lived animals, and as pointed out earlier, they're charismatic megafauna. So they draw a lot of human attention to themselves, which can help other animals as well as the ocean and even ourselves. So just remember that while we go here. I'm going to be talking about bottlenose dolphins, a little bit about manatees, sea lions, and sea otters. And if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt. As a pathologist, I do have some photomicrographs, and if I see your head's like going back and your eyes are going ahead, I'll point you out, right? No, I tried to pull all the real technical stuff out because this is very important stuff for everyone to know. So what mainly I'm going to talk about is a program that I helped start way back in 2003, and it's called the Health and Environmental Risk Assessment Program for Atlantic bottlenose dolphins. And it's a very good sentinel species model. We started that project at Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute. Now it's funded by the Georgia Aquarium. It's a collaborative study between Georgia Aquarium and other groups. It's a multidisciplinary and multi-institutional study, and it's based in the Indian River Lagoon and Charleston, South Carolina. The new permit is going to include the Matanzas River because this area, very little is known about the dolphins in this area and their health. So, but the first 15 years or 14 years, I guess, has been centered in the Indian River Lagoon and Charleston. And you may have heard, how many here have heard on TV what's happening in the Indian River Lagoon? Okay, it's a real mess environmentally. These dolphins are telling us something about that mess in the environment, and again, the Sentinel concept not only telling us about environmental health, the dolphins do, but they tell us about our own health. So we've looked at over 360, actually 370 dolphins we've looked at. We capture these animals and give them a complete physical. I'm telling you, they get a better physical than you do when you go to your doctor. The cost of working up one of these animals is about $12,000. So you can do the math. We have a tremendous collaborative group. We look at ultrasound, we look at blood work. My PhD is in immunology, so we look at immune function studies. So it's a very complex operation, and I'm very proud that we have 92 peer-reviewed publications from the study since it began. That's a lot of publications. These are peer-reviewed by our colleague scientists. So in some of these slides, I put some of our publications. If you guys want them, you can just email me, and I'll send you a PDF. Okay. So, why do we pick the Indian River? Indian River is a very large estuary. It takes about a third of the east coast of Florida. It's very big. It tends to be very shallow, and there are not a lot of openings to the Atlantic. So, the dolphins that live in the IRL, the reports suggest it's about 1,000 animals. They stay in this ecosystem their whole life. Goes from Ponce Inlet all the way down to Jupiter, about 170 miles. I first got interested in these when I was at the medical school at the University of Miami, and they brought me these photographs from their dolphin photo ID program. And you can see these skin lesions on these animals, these raised skin lesions that are kind of white, cauliflower looking. Those start to raise a lot of red flags in my eyes. So we started this study. It's a federal study. This has to be permitted by the federal government. The operations, the idea is we do not hurt these animals. They get a physical just like you do. They get samples taken, then they're released. We've never killed a dolphin in the Indian River. We've never made one sick. But what the beauty of this, because these animals have site fidelity, they don't leave, we can follow them over time. So from 2003 to 2017, we're able to look at these animals over time and see how their health changes. We don't have that opportunity. It's a real blessing in a wildlife study because usually you don't get to see the same animal again. So that becomes very important. I'll tell you in a minute why.
Real quick, can I pause? Sorry.
Sure. This slide I want to show you how the process is for these animals. Actually, we do this process, some of these things here to keep these animals healthy at Marineland. But this is a dolphin on a covered boat on a mat, and the idea is they can't thermoregulate very well out of the water. They can stay out of the water forever, not forever, for a long time. If you keep them moist, and you can see what we do here. We're taking samples from the blowhole. A lot of samples get taken, blood samples. Again, one of my studies is immunology, so we do a lot of immune function testing, especially tests looking at immune function and cytokines and things that are very sophisticated. This is we're taking a nasal sinus swab. We look for various bacteria that might be in there, viruses. We take a gastric sample, looking again for any pathologic changes that may be in one of their three stomachs. We do ultrasound. If we find a pregnant animal where they first get ultrasounded in the water, and if they're in the first trimester of their pregnancy, they get a blood sample taken, and then they're immediately released. If they're in the second trimester or third trimester, they get released immediately. So we haven't had any issues with that. A lot of the animals, this is a satellite tag. It's put on the dorsal fin, and this thing eventually will fall off in about 90 days. So we get good telemetry data on where these animals are going and what they're doing. Again, you've got to remember that they don't typically leave the Indian River. Although, we have a photo ID across the street as part of our field station, the aquarium's field station, and they are reporting, our staff across the street is reporting Indian River dolphins coming into the Matanzas area, which is rather interesting. Yes?
So on the dolphin, does the blowhole work like our nose as a filtering system, or just as they breathe?
The blowhole is kind of like our nose, and it goes similarly through a series of sinuses, and then attaches to the larynx. It's just the anatomy of the larynx in a dolphin's a little different because it goes through the roof of the mouth and attaches to the blowhole, which is on the top of the head. So, yeah, it's very similar.
So, sorry, we're still having issues.
Is that a lesion on that dolphin? That white
This
spot?
is a biopsy we take to look at blubber. We're looking at human contaminants that put in fat in these animals, like PCBs.
Sorry, real quick, just gonna.
Any other questions while we're connecting? Yeah.
So, like in humans, a lot of times you can carry like MRSA and things in your nose, even though you're not infected with it. Is that how their blowhole works?
Yes, and I'll answer very good question, and we're going to be talking about that in a minute.
We're going to try this and see if this works.
The whole process takes about 40 minutes to do this physical, and again, then they're released and followed by a photo ID group of people. And it's really quite funny. Some animals that we recatch, we have a big long net out, and they see us coming in, and it's like they just stop and they wait till we come over and pick them up, and then they wait for their buddies to get examined. They'll actually stay there. I have a great video of that. I don't think I brought it, where the male dolphin goes, he leaves, and then he turns around and he looks at us like, who are those people? Aren't they? They're very odd people, but you can just see the look in his face.
Sorry, we're still having issues.
The dolphin that you've seen at further south and then showed up here, telemetry data, does it indicate they come up the ICW or some offshore in the end?
They're likely coming up the intercoastal. They don't typically, the offshore dolphins don't typically intermix with the ones in the intercoastal. Sometimes here it seems they probably mix a little bit more because they're a little bit more wider. Up till Hurricane Matthew, the openings were a little wider. And we have some information that the oceanic dolphins may be coming in and intermixing with. But I think it's interesting the IRO animals come out this far, because that's a long way.
We're good. Sorry.
Okay. So I'm going to start talking about some of the diseases, and I want you to think about this One Health concept. Again, One Health is the integration between animal, human, and environmental health. And this is what this is the underlying message to this, and there will be a quiz at the end, right? And if you don't pass it, Kevin Roberts will take you out here with arms. Hey, we're going to talk about morbility viruses. These are viruses, again, these concept of emerging diseases. This virus emerged back in the late 80s. It's a highly lethal virus to dolphins in most cases. It's a paramyxovirus. It's related to canine distemper. How many here have dogs? Okay, you get your dog vaccinated for canine distemper. This is a morbility virus. The morbility virus in people, does anyone know what it is? Everybody? Measles. Measles, and it can, measles in children can cause high morbidity. So these viruses appeared. There are actually a few of them. Ocine distemper is the seal morbility virus. It's related to canine distemper. Corbin and Dolphus morbility virus is now called cetacean morbility virus, are related to two morbility viruses seen in hoof stock. So the point is that these are highly lethal viruses. The first epizootic or epidemic of this virus occurred in the late 80s. And then just last couple of years, we've had a mid-Atlantic epizootic of morbility. You probably heard about it on the news. Dolphins were dying from Virginia all the way down to Florida, went all the way down to the Keys. So this is a highly lethal virus. The animals that get it die of pneumonia, but it massively suppresses their immune system, so they don't have any ability to mount an immune response. What we found in the Indian River was fascinating. So I told you the oceanic dolphins, this is highly lethal, and really thousands of dolphins have died from the most recent outbreak. But in the IRL, we look for antibody titers in the dolphins to morbility virus. So we take a blood sample, we look for antibody levels of this, and sure enough, we found them in the absence of an epizootic or epidemic. So the Indian River dolphins are getting infected by this virus, but they're not getting sick. So this is highly unusual. So no pathologic evidence of disease, but we're seeing the immune dysfunction that we see in dogs and that we see in children that have measles. So these animals are immune suppressed. They get the virus. They're not dying of pneumonia, but they're infected. They're subclinically infected, but their immune systems are shot. So what happens when your immune system is not working right? Yeah, right. You get susceptible to other things. So you've heard of these unusual mortality events. In this case, these animals may be immune suppressed and be dying from other things. So that's the take-home point here. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But certainly, this is totally unusual that they're getting subclinical infection. And the point is, for the One Health concept, is this impacts ecosystem health. This isn't a virus people get. Measles and the morbidity virus in dolphins are species specific. So the dolphins aren't, transmitting this to people. But when you start removing these top of the predator ecosystem, food chain predators from the ecosystem, you develop ecosystem disease or ecosystem becomes compromised. So this is a One Health ecosystem issue. And it's certainly quite interesting. So we looked at other things from the blood, and do a lot of blood samples. The take-home message from this slide is we're seeing Eastern equine encephalitis infection. Again, they're infected, they're making antibodies, but they're not. I'm not getting sick from the disease. Eastern equine encephalitis, West Nile virus. How many have heard of that? That is a human disease. So is Eastern equine encephalitis, actually. The take-home point here is this is the first report of these zoonotic pathogens in cetaceans. So zoonosis is a disease transmitted from an animal to humans. So these diseases are transmitted by mosquitoes. So questions that I get is, so how do dolphins get mosquito-borne illnesses?
They eat?
Say what?
Do they eat?
No. It's the same as people. They get fed by mosquitoes. And in the Indian River especially, these mosquitoes can be quite amazing. But these are mosquito-borne diseases, and dolphins get mosquito bites. And it's quite common. So a little take-home trivia. Yes?
Okay, is sharks really like to get dolphin back?
Say it again?
Sharks get dolphins to eat and swim.
I'm getting multiple conversations. Can you stand up and let me hear?
How do they get mosquito bites if they're in water?
So how do they get mosquito bites if they're in water? Well, before you go, when you're on your way out, I want you to look at these dolphins. And when they breed, they come to the surface of the water. And some animals like to hang out at the surface, especially it's when they sleep at night, but they're always breaking the water and they're always exposed, and that's where they get the mosquito bites. It's a very good question. They get them typically right behind the blowhole and a little further back, right where they break the water. You want a job working with me? All right. So that's so another emerging disease that we're seeing are papillomaviruses. And I got into this studying these viruses a long time ago. How many of you here remember the free willy whale, Keiko? Yeah, everybody raises heads. Well, Keiko had the first papillomavirus in its skin. But there are others we found, and probably the ones I'm going to talk about are the Manatee PVs. We have about 6 of these now. They're like people papillomaviruses. Human papillomavirus can cause something as benign as a wart, or it's the second leading cause of death in women globally is from cervical cancer. So it can be as benign as a wart or as serious as papillomavirus causing cervical cancer. So we're seeing these emerge. We have no clue why, but we're going to talk about these here. The clinical signs. This is Keiko, the killer whale, and this is right behind his dorsal fin. This tape measures about 3.5 feet, so there's huge plaque. If you go back and look at the movie, you'll see these plaques on him. One reason why the whale should never have been released, because he's got an infection. Viral infection, let alone he was like a big puppy dog and he'd want to put his head in your lap and want his tongue scratched. So that's not a good release candidate. I've released hundreds of marine mammals, and we really need to pay attention to what our agendas mean rather than what's best for the animals. So this whale was released. He was not a release candidate. He died alone in Norway, begging for fish, wanting human attention. So you guys need to make the decision when you hear these comments about releasing all these animals. The likelihood of these animals surviving that have been born here, my goodness, most of these animals are born here. They would never survive in the wild, and I personally believe it's inhumane to let an animal like that go, because they're not going to live. Keiko's a good example. If you want to read some good science, read Killing Keiko. It's a book by Mark Simmons that just came out a couple years ago. But releasing marine mammals to the wild can be done. It tends to be easier in less social animals like manatees. But even then, you have to be very careful, and you have to do follow through. And letting a killer whale go that never realigns with any of their social animals. He was not with any other killer whales for years. He ended up in Norway, and he died. So that's not a success. And I just caution you, just think about what some of these agendas mean, because they're not thinking about the animal. And that's another lecture if you want to invite me back.
September.
So this is the manatee papilloma. This just emerged just a few years ago. This is one I'm really worried about. And we'll talk about this. This is on the tongue of a bottlenose dolphin. This is a benign papilloma now, but we'll talk about what happens to those later.
It might have died. You want to go?
Oh,
It might have died.
okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, thanks. So from our free-ranging study, this is a papilloma on the tongue. It's like a very fissured kind of cauliflower-looking lesion. And the same lesions occur in the genital areas. These are called sessile papillomas. This is what they look like microscopically, which I'll go into. I had a postdoctoral person at Harbor Branch when we did some of this. This is PCR. It's just a way of looking for DNA in these tumors. And we found herpes virus DNA in the lesions. We now have 9 papillomaviruses in dolphins. It's amazing, and these are just emerging diseases. And in humans, there are hundreds. But we're concerned about why these are emerging and certainly what impact they're going to have on the dolphins. These are tests that we're doing in collaboration with some of our university folks. So, yes.
So are these things that are newly detected? Are we just now detecting them, that they've been there a long time, or is it just something that's never been seen before and is coming out?
Well, it's a very good question whether these are new or we're just picking them up now. I believe these are new because we've been doing surveys on doing autopsies on marine mammals since the early 70s and have not seen anything like this until recently. And certainly in the health assessment study, in the first year we did the IRL study in 2003, we found no papillomas at all. The second year we found about 10%. And like the fifth year it went up to 60%. So it appears it is an infectious disease and it's being rapidly transmitted, and it's likely a sexually transmitted disease.
I have a question. Are these the ones that are related to the ones in sea turtles that are found in sea turtles?
Well, it's not the same virus. Same process probably, but not the same. Not the same virus. Most papillomaviruses are species specific, meaning the human one can infect manatees, and manatees can infect people, and vice versa. So, as a wrap up here on these papillomas, we reported these first in the mouth and genital areas from bottlenose dolphins from the IRL. Actually, tumors represent one or more progressive diseases. In all of these tumors, we found a novel herpes virus, and in about 30%, we found a novel papillomavirus. We feel right now that the papillomavirus probably comes in and initiates the changes that cause the cells to grow and become tumorous, and then the herpes virus comes along as a cofactor.
So what do you all do?
So what do? In wild dolphins, we don't do anything because we're not there to treat these animals. The federal permit would not allow us to take them out and to treat. So what we are doing is reporting the facts and monitoring and giving that to people that may have ways to mitigate this. We have seen some of these similar lesions in animals under human care. And when we see these, we can manage. I'm going to talk about this, but that we can manage the tumors, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Yes?
Have you noticed any changes in particular in the water and the systems around them that could be related to the change?
The question was whether or not environmental changes, water changes might be involved, and we don't have good information on that. But certainly the oceans are changing. We know that. We know ocean temperatures are going up. We know that the pH they're becoming more acid. So we know the oceans are changing. So it's certainly one cofactor we're looking at. So another one is dolphin pox, and these are real interesting lesions. It's called a tattoo lesion, skin, and then if you look, here's my photomicrograph for you. If you look at this cell, this is one of the cells in that lesion. It's called a keratinocyte, skin cell. You see these very large, pale pink bodies, and those are pox viruses. So this is a pox virus lesion. Well, what's really interesting about these is this disease has no clinical significance to the dolphin. The lesion doesn't hurt them, but it's an indicator that something's going on in the environment or stress of the animal that's causing what's called recrudescence. How many here have cold sores? Geez, I get no one raise their hands. That's great. That's my own little survey. So it acts like a herpes virus that causes cold sores. You know, when you go out in the sun, you get sunburned, or you have a cold or a flu or whatever, stress, that activates the virus and the cold sore becomes evident. So in these cases, the virus doesn't hurt the animal, so it's kind of acting like a herpes virus, but it's a pox virus. It's rather interesting. I had an NIH fellowship to study this at the University of Miami School of Medicine, which is probably the first and last time NIH gave a fellowship to study dolphin disease. But they were interested in this, the fact how it comes back. So, it doesn't hurt the animal, but it indicates some sort of stressors going on. So the first couple of years of, this is an IRL dolphin from our health assessment, and you can see these little spots. That's pox virus. In the first few years of our study, 90% of the dolphins that we looked at had pox virus. So it's totally unheard of on those kind of numbers, because usually you would expect maybe 2 to 5% of a population would have it. Some of that would be due to social stress or pathologic stress or whatever. So that's a warning that something's going on. We have seen similar lesions in right whales right out here off Marineland. So, you know, that may be a warning sign that's happening with this species, which is critically endangered, as you guys probably know. So I'm going to shift gears now to a couple other marine mammals, talk about otters, and the disease toxoplasmosis. Again, keep this One Health this concept in mind, this interrelationships between human, animal, and environmental health. Toxoplasmosis is a protozoan infection caused by T. gondii. It's found in cat feces, which is why when women are pregnant, you don't want to clean the cat box. This is what happens. It has a lot of potential impact to the fetus. The toxo is a major cause of mortality among southern sea otters, like this youngster here. And what we found in 2012 as part of our research at Georgia Aquarium is that we documented this for the first time in Antillean manatees in Puerto Rico. The aquarium has research stations globally now, and one of our partners is at the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, and we found this in Antillean manatees, which is pretty much unheard of in herbivore to get this disease. Proximity to freshwater outflows appear to be the major risk factor, and ingestion of the eggs from cat feces are considered the most likely source. One of our colleagues in this research is a USDA scientist who's well known internationally for his work with toxoplasma and other species, and he was amazed by this. These animals were not only infected with toxoplasma, but the infection had disseminated throughout the body of these animals and killed them. And when you see something like that with toxoplasma, you think of immune suppression, because HIV/AIDS patients will get this disease, and it'll become disseminated. But the animals that we saw this with, the manatees, were massively infected. In fact, I thought someone was pulling a joke on me when they sent these, because this is nothing reported commonly in manatees. So the take-home point here is, so how is a herbivore getting infected with cat feces? Well, it turns out there are about 900,000 feral cats in Puerto Rico. So that's a lot of poop in the water. They're very interesting. So let's go to a little species. Otters and manatees serve as sentinels. Again, this miner's canary concept. Since they share the same environment and consume some of the same foods. This is really interesting. It provides some information on the emergence of disease at the interface between wild domestic animals and humans. So this is a zoonotic pathogen. So this is the one directly. When the ones I've talked about previously aren't typically infecting people, this one does. So this is something you need to keep your eye out for, for obvious reasons. We're going to switch to chlamydia. Chlamydia is a type of bacteria. It causes a disease called chlamydiosis. We found that the animals in the Indian River have evidence of that they're making antibodies to this organism. But again, they're not showing any clinical disease, but the infection is causing immune system issues. So it's kind of like that morbidity virus thing. This is a zoonotic pathogen, though, and this can be transmitted to people. So it has an impact on both environmental and human health. And we feel that this is probably, it's a path. Have you ever heard of parrot fever? If you have a parrot, some people get a flu-like disease. This is found in birds, and our theory right now is that the seabirds are carrying this, and then when they fly over the intercoastal, they defecate with the bacteria in it, and then it gets in the food chain, or the dolphins pick it up. So this is another zoonotic problem. Okay, this is a disease actually that I wrote a paper about way back when I was a resident. It's called lobomycosis. You can see this kind of mat of white cauliflower-like lesions on the animal. The numbers here are areas in the world where we see the disease, and the letters are where we pick it up in dolphins. Historically, this disease was thought to be caused by a fungus called Lacasia loboi. And this disease was reported only in humans and dolphins. But if you're persistent with science, always ask questions. No one ever could grow the Lacasia loboi. So we did some, just recently, 2016, we did some molecular work and found out quite amazingly that this is not Lacasia loboi. It's a fungus called Neurotoxic brasiliensis. So it's still a fungus, but it's a new type of fungus. And the disease is now termed Paracoccidioido mycosis CD. So this is why you never believe anything that you read until you really investigate it completely. And this, for 80 years, this was misidentified. So now it's got a new name. That's what dolphins in the IRL look like when they have this disease. You notice this little indentation. That's a classic indicator. It's a fat body behind the blowhole called nuchal fat. And when they get sick, they metabolize that fat very quickly. And it becomes indented because there's no more fat under here. So we call this peanut head, but this animal is critically ill. And this animal has lobomycosis. The question is, Paracoccidioides. The question is, and what's fascinating, these animals look like HIV/AIDS patients. They're massively immune suppressed. They can't fight off anything. So the question is this causing the immune suppression, or is it immune suppression secondary to something else? And based on our preliminary work and based on the fungal infections of other species, it looks like that something's suppressing their immune system first, and then they're able to get this disease. So what's that? And we'll talk about that in a minute. This dolphin is going to die. It has died. Switch base to harmful algal blooms. These are blooms of plankton that occur, and anyone here been in a harmful algal bloom on the west coast? Usually on the west coast of Florida. They're caused by these plankton that release these biotoxins in your eyes, water. It's horrible. And typically you see it on the west coast of Florida. The little plankton causes this. Actually, this is probably not a new issue. It's reported biblically in Exodus. But the organisms are microscopic. They produce toxins in them that impact dolphins and manatees. The toxins are neurotoxic, and in people, if you eat oysters and any other mollusks that are filter feeders, they can concentrate this toxin in, and people they get this called neurotoxic shellfish poisoning. It's a very complex intoxication, which I've studied since the late 90s now. There are 9 or more toxins called brevetoxins in the Florida red tide, and they're produced by this dinoflagellate, Carina brevis. This is a neurotoxin, and it binds sodium gated channels in the brain. This will if you eat enough of this, will kill you. And we had a study to look at this in people, actually. What we found, and I promise look at one of the last photo might be right. But these are cells in the lymph node of a manatee that died of brevetoxin. These are cells, the same cells in a manatee that did not die of brevetoxin. We used a special immunohistochemical technique when I was at the University of Miami Medical School, and we developed a technique that very simply allows you to see the toxin. Under the microscope, toxins you usually don't see. With this technique, with antibody labeling, you can actually see the toxin. So we were able to trace the toxin in these manatees that died from inhaling brevetoxin through their lymph nodes. These were packed in the lymph nodes, and they were coming from the nasal cavity from where these animals were breathing in. But these toxins then became systemic, which we're able to trace with this technique. You notice nothing's brown here. So this is a control. So we're able to figure out the pathogenesis of this infection. It's really quite interesting. Again, this tie back to One Health, how we're integrating this back to human medicine. In emergency rooms on the west coast of Florida, during a red tide, you notice all of the increases in respiratory disease, 54% for respiratory diagnosis, pneumonia, bronchitis. Importantly, part of our grant showed that the toxin is actually a trigger for asthma. So if you have asthma, you breathe this toxin in, and it's a trigger to stimulate an asthma attack. So, and the same thing happens, the same pattern happens in manatees. So the manatee is kind of like the Florida's 2,000-pound canary. That it can ingest it or inhale the toxin. We're concerned about the inhalation of this toxin by people. There are vector mechanisms, meaning that the toxin can be found in the manatee's case in seagrass. High dose causes acute neurotoxic issues called neurotoxic shellfish poisoning, which we'll talk about. But then the low dose is what I'm worried about, this constant breathing in, some incidents of acute and chronic respiratory disease, and it also is immunosuppressive. So we see these toxins here. The way the currents work in Florida, the toxins are brought up along the coast, and these will impact human health, and it's something you need to be careful of. There are other toxins like saxitoxin that are biowarfare agents. This is one of the most potent neurotoxins on the planet. It's produced similarly by phytoplankton, and these will kill you. There's a global pandemic of these blooms right now, and it's one of the areas it's thought to be stimulated by what's happening in our oceans.
Doctor?
Are these blooms becoming more frequent because the ocean is getting warmer and more acidic?
That's one theory. Yep. These biotoxins are bad. I mean, I've seen them. They're very bad actors. There's one called domoic acid, which impacts sea lions on the west coast. It's usually a west coast toxin, although we picked domoic acid up in some whales here. This is going to become a problem, more of a problem for us in our food fish that we need to be monitoring, because we're already starting to pick this up in the food fish that we feed our marine mammals at very small levels, but it's something that we all need to be aware of. So have I made your day happy yet? All right. So somebody talked earlier about MRSA. What we do with our program, we take fecal samples, take a poop sample, and then we culture out on a bacterial plate what kind of organisms are there. Then we detect their sensitivity to antibiotics. Now, theoretically and intuitively, should wild dolphins have antibiotic-resistant bacteria in them? No. Why?
You don't
treat them. Yeah, they don't get treated. So to find antibiotic resistance is a big deal, and I think we found a very high prevalence of antibiotic resistance in fecal, gastric, and blowable samples. The antibiotics they were resistant to erythromycin, ampicillin, and cephalothrin. And dolphins and sentinels, again, the potential public health risk from these antibiotic resistance is definitely a human issue of human concern. The CDC considers this problem the most important problem for humans on our planet right now. 2 million people are infected with antibiotic-resistant infections every year, and 23,000 of those people die. This is the bacteria that you hear about, the superbugs that people get, and there's nothing that treats it because they're resistant to all the antibiotics, and you usually have to do heroics to save the patient. So we're seeing this problem in dolphins. It's not causing health problems for dolphins, but this is, or at least at this time it appears, but this is a sentinel for really serious potential people problems. So how are what's causing the resistance? Certainly direct transfer of organisms from septic tanks or sewers, something like that, and the other selection in the environment. So what drives the pressure? Certainly if you pour your antibiotics down the drain, they're going to get into a system and they're just going to be transferred up the food chain. Mercury and other metals can cause some selective pressure as well as salinity changes. So that's something that is a spin-off from this that really is quite fascinating for me from this One Health perspective. Mercury, 48,000 or 4,800 to 8,300 tons a year of elemental mercury is put into the environment. Florida seems to be an atmospheric dump for mercury. There's not a whole lot of industry in the state that produces this, but globally, because of the weather patterns and climate patterns, the mercury is dumped in Florida. The elemental mercury is transformed to methylmercury, which is the toxic organic form. This has amazing toxicity to the human fetus. How many kids here know what this is? Who this is? Mad Hatter. Good. The Mad Hatter, actually, the reason why he was mad, they used to use mercury to line hats. And it would, because it's a liquid metal, it would hold the hat and hold the form of the hat. And you put it on your head, and where the metal was would go right on your skin, and use that enough to become mad. So that's how the Mad Hatter is. A little more trivia for you. But anyways, this is bad for kids, developing kids, and it's also a toxin for adults. The highest levels of mercury that we've ever found in dolphins were in the Indian River. Total mercury in Florida dolphins 4 to 5 times higher in the blood and skin than Charleston dolphins, where our sister study is done. Methyl mercury was higher than methyl mercury in beluga whales that had suspected mercury-associated tumors. And those beluga whales live up in the St. Lawrence Seaway where there are very high levels of mercury. So, and the third bullet there is truly amazing to me. The total mercury and methyl mercury in the skin of Florida dolphins exceeds EPA standards. The EPA gives us the range we're allowed to have, but it exceeds EPA standards for mercury by 21 times in the skin, and 11 times for methyl mercury. So if you could eat a dolphin, you wouldn't want to because it would probably kill you. So what are the health implications of that? Well, this is where the One Health concept really comes in, and it's quite amazing. We took our study using the dolphin as a sentinel species of mercury and applied it to human beings. So our group looked at mean mercury levels in Indian River Lagoon recreational anglers, and it was 1.5 micrograms per gram. In Canada, in the St. Lawrence, it was 0.8. Wisconsin recreational fishermen 0.8, and on the Gulf Coast 1.1. This is the level that the EPA lists as right at the toxic level. So we looked at this a little bit more, and the key findings that the mean recreational fisherman mercury concentration was above the EPA level of 1 part per million. It was 1.5. When you go those kind of jumps in this level, these are pretty important. So 1 ppm is the highest acceptable exposure level, not cause long-term health effects. So the anglers in the IRL have a problem already. So mercury concentrations were significantly associated with seafood consumption. That's kind of intuitive. The males were twice as likely to have mercury concentration above 1 part per million, and females is because most of the fishermen were men. And this is the first study to examine shared environmental exposure to mercury between human and dolphin populations in the same geographic region. And uses an animal sentinel to identify public health problems. So this is probably the first time that I've seen a marine mammal issue be used and go back to a human health issue. So what we're doing now, because mercury is such a toxin to the developing fetus and creates all sorts of problems for the young kids, we're looking at pregnant women mercury levels from local hospitals. And it's quite easy. Mercury can be monitored by pulling the hair out of your head, and we monitor the mercury levels. So this is the next step, and it's truly amazing to me that a dolphin study has led to a human issues health study, and now to a potential fetal problem. So it's a really good example of how aquariums like Georgia Aquarium, Marineland folks were addressing issues in dolphins in the wild that can potentially really seriously impact our own health. So that's that. So just studying this One Health concept, this integration of animal, human, and environmental health. These studies help to identify the ecological relationships of emerging disease, which there are many in the ocean, between marine mammals, domestic animals, and humans. It provides a brand new avenue for understanding the interface between ecosystem and public health issues, us. It's our own best interest to investigate all wildlife health patterns. When I started this research work on dolphins, people would come up to me and say, well, I like dolphins, but what does this have to do with me? We've proven now this has something to do with you. So this is a human issue. It's our own best interest to investigate these trends because 3/4 of all these emerging diseases in people are zoonotic. Remember, the zoonosis is a disease that goes from animals to people. A big reason for that is globalization. We're changing the entire ecosystems of the planet. Animals, people, humans are exposed to new types of species they haven't been, like bats. on a chronic, and they, these things like Ebola and all these Lassa virus, all these other viruses emerge. So we need to pay attention because 3/4 of emerging diseases are zoonotic. Most originate in wildlife, okay? And the incidence is increasing. I mean, you can just Google that, and you'll see a lot of how these came from animals to people. So ocean health is inextricably linked to human health on a global scale. What that means is our oceans, right out here, they regulate our environment and climate. Okay, they provide half the oxygen we breathe on this planet. They provide extreme biodiversity that provides protein for people to survive on the planet. 25% of the folks live on the planet rely on this protein from the ocean. We're seeing there's a tremendous economic driver involved. There's money involved. That 1 in 5 jobs globally is related to ocean work. So this, even though you might live in Atlanta or Chicago, you're being impacted by what's happening in the ocean. So it's an important take-home message. So this is an animal we rehabbed at Harbor Branch where I used to work. His name was Rocket Man, which I thought was a testimony to Elton John, which was great. But anyway, I just wanted to end this by saying one thing. And I'm very sensitive about this, and I haven't typically said it to a group of folks like you, but I just want you to realize what we found out from studying these 2 large populations of animals, about 400 animals right now, is the dolphins in the wild that we study are sick. They have serious issues. When you look at these animals out here, they don't have any of these issues except for possibly with this tumor in the mouth. But I don't see lobomycosis. I don't see all these other issues in these animals. So when someone tells you that these animals don't live as long, it's a lie. These animals live longer because why? They get 24-hour veterinary care. I have a PhD nutritionist that works in my staff that provides all these diets. I can tell you how many kilocalories these animals get. They get preventive medicine work. They're happy. They enjoy what they do. They have babies. They live a lot longer. The lie is that they live. We had a 62-year-old animal here. I'm practicing geriatric medicine now because these guys. No, it's a true story. These guys live a lot longer, and the proof is in. And you can check the records. I'm not telling stories here. These animals are healthier. And one of the reasons why I started this project was to try to compare the populations. And it's like night and day. So you can make your story about captivity or non-captivity, but at least have the right data. They live longer, they're healthier. We have a paper coming out in PLOS ONE that shows they're less stressed, actually, in a human situation. And it shows, among other things, that while the free-ranging animals have much higher activity immune system because they're constantly bombarded by pathogens. These animals are not. Their immune systems are fine-tuned down, but they don't have the constant exposure to what's happening out in our oceans. So get the right information. Enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Ask you a question.
Sure.
Where do you get your funding, and do you anticipate difficulties getting it in the future?
Where do I get my funding, and do I anticipate difficulties? Is that like a political question? So, the funding for the initial Florida work was from the Protect Wild Dolphins license plate. Have you seen that? In the specialty plate. The funding that now comes totally from Georgia Aquarium. From revenue from ticket sales. So when you come to Georgia Aquarium, which includes Marineland, a percentage of that goes to do this work.